Hello, everyone. Welcome today. Welcome to GMAT Club MBA application walkthrough. My name is Bisayo, and I'll be your host today. So every Thursday and Friday for 6 weeks, we started this last week. We will feature admissions experts and admissions teams to go step by step through every aspect of the online application for top 25 MBA programs. So please be sure to subscribe to our channel to stay updated and to support for every event that we publish. I'll be your host, like I said today, and we're covering Rotman School of Management. Together with me today is Shruti. She's an admissions consultant at GoSB, and she has helped hundreds of people with their MBA applications. It's my pleasure to welcome Shruti to the session this morning. Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Fisayo. It's nice to have you here, and it's always a pleasure to interact and see, what are the questions that we can address. And today we are bringing up the Rotman MBA application, a very typical application process. And thank you for the introduction as well. It's a pleasure to connect with the audience today, and that too on a Friday evening, especially for the ones who are joining from India. So, warm welcome to everybody, and sorry for spoiling your Friday evenings as well. So, but we can get started, Fisayo, when you let us know. Right. So the Rotman School of Management is, there is the MBA program. It's a 2-year MBA program. And if you're applying to this, then that means you are heading for one of the top schools in Canada. And if the application process is to be looked into very clearly, it is divided into 3 sections. So the first section will ask you about information related to your demographics, about your work experience, about your the kind of activities that you have been involved in. Apart from that, you will have some introduction to the video interview. We will come to the video interview and discuss that in a lot of detail in slightly a short while from now. The second section would require you to add details about your your academics as well as your test scores. And the third section is about the essay and the additional supplemental information that you have to share. So, something that is typical about this application itself is that you can't navigate amongst all the 3 sections unless you have done the first one. So, complete section 1, the gateway to the section 2 opens up, then the magical gateway to the section 3 opens up. So, this is how the application form proceeds. And so, once you create your login, and you do click on verifying your login, you will have access to changing your password for the application form, and then you come to this particular screen, which is where you start with adding the selecting the program, selecting the entry term that you are coming in for. So this is what we have done. We have selected the 2024 fall entry, and you do need to add some details about whether you have applied previously to Rotman. So the school wants to know whether you have previously applied and then in which year. Apart from that, there is a section about adding as to what was the status of your previous application. So in case you've not applied, you can actually just go to this section and select no. I've just selected yes so that I can take you through the complete process itself. As we see and we'll see going forward, there is no separate re-applicant essay that you have to fill. This is just the information that the school is asking for. It is a mandatory field. So you need to add the academic year where you when you previously applied, as well as the previous application status. What was it when you were rejected finally? Again, you also need to add information about whether you are applying to any other University of Toronto program, and whether you have already been enrolled at any other program at the university. So this is the information that you begin your application for the Rotman MBA with. And as always, for every application form, keep on saving your application at every stage. Excuse me. Coming to the next part of this magical section 1, we have information about yourself. You need to add about your address. You need to add your contact details, add your work email addresses, verify those, add your contact numbers. Now, there is a section which asks you about the social media information about you, that is your LinkedIn profile. If you see here closely, this is not a mandatory profile. So if you have your LinkedIn profile and you would like to share it with the school, provided it is updated, of course, so then do add your LinkedIn profile over here. Otherwise, there's no negative as such attached to it if you are not adding it. Finally, in this particular part of this application, you need to add your legal status. You have a few choices about adding whether you're a Canadian citizen, you have a PR of Canada, or you are a non-citizen, or a non-citizen coming in with a study visa, or a refugee. For a lot of Indian students, I think this will be the case that will apply. So we've chosen that, and a lot of international students as well. And then you can add information about whether you are in the process of a PR in Canada. Finally, add information about your citizenship. Uh, I am an Indian. I've added India over here. Do you have additional citizenships? Please do disclose it over here. And then add your birth date, your gender, your birth country. And finally, this is an interesting part. You can add your, you can check over here if you have your spouse or partner also coming in for the program. If they are applying for the program, you need to check this box as well. Otherwise, you can let it be. And then this part requires you to add the languages. So we've selected English and French. So add the additional languages, the spoken languages. That means you should be, it's not written anywhere, it's not a mandatory part, but you can add languages over here where you are fluent, and you think that it will add an advantage to your application. Right. The last part of this page will want you to uh, add about your primary relationship to Toronto. That means, do you have family, you have friends, or there are any other ways that you are connected with Toronto as such? And then select your industry, the post MBA industry interest, as well as your post MBA function that you are interested in. So these are the information that the tabs that you have to fill up when you start your application. The next part of the application is the diversity and the inclusion survey. So this is a purely optional part of the application. You can choose not to answer any of these questions, and it is perfectly okay. It will not affect your chances in any way. You just need to make sure that if you're choosing not to answer, you do select that option from the drop down menu. So there are a lot of options available to you, and you can very well choose not to answer any of the questions, but do keep on progressing with the form by mentioning that you choose not to answer. Otherwise, towards the end of this application, or towards the end of the section of the application, you will probably receive an error. So it is best to mention that you have looked into it and you are choosing not to answer it. That's perfectly fine. Right. So this is a very important section of your application. Fisayo, in case you have any questions that you would like me to take up before progressing to the next section, I will be happy to take it up, and please do share it
Okay.
with me.
Thank you, Shruti. We don't have any questions yet, but please, everyone who's watching, please be sure to let me know where you are viewing this video from, and then hit like on this video. And of course, you can always drop your questions in the comments. At the intervals, we'll be taking the questions.
Great. So let's progress towards the next part of this section, which is about the work experience. So you have to add the total number of postgraduate work experience. So that means after you have gotten your bachelor's degree, what is your exact number of years of work experience, and add your current salary. Then I do go ahead with adding my job title, the employer, and what type of an employment it is. You do need to give a start date, and if it is your current employment, you can check this box saying that it is your current position and you're continuing working at this. Mention the industry and the function as well. So annual salary, industry, function, these are mandatory boxes that you need to fill. Apart from this, there is this very important piece of information which you can add and which will really help your application, which is the employer website. So for international applicants, or for even for domestic applicants, if you look at if you consider your companies, every but he's not applying from an MNC. Even if it is an MNC, they have so many departments that it is always worthwhile to, give them a close up of exactly where you work and what is the company into. So it is always worthwhile to use this particular option. It is not mandatory, but still do try and see if this will add value to your explanation towards your work experience at the employer website, the country as well as the city, so that the school can really go into more details and see what the employer is doing before they, you know, uh, judge your work experience at any level. Similarly, you can add your previous work experiences as well. So if you've worked in more than one company, you can go into add work experience and add the similar information for all your previous employers as well. The next part of section 1 is about other activities. So, this section is very important because it lets you talk about your awards, achievements, and community involvement. Everything cannot be covered in the essay. The essay is just 500 words of information where you will, you have already have around 3 or 4 things to address. So, if you have awards and achievements, and there are things that you want to highlight to to the admissions committee, then this is the place to do that. Name the award, then you select whether it is academic, professional, or community, and then go forward to add a description. So, why this description is important is because it sets the context. I would be so, for example, you got a spot award for a certain project. Now, what is a spot award in your organization? Is it given to 1 out of 400? It is given, or maybe it is an academic achievement. You scored a certain grade in a certain Olympiad. How many people apply to that program? So, how many people apply to that Olympiad? So, that really sets the benchmark and does help you talk more about your achievement from a very specific point of view. Yes, it is an academic achievement. I was given this award in this year, but then this is what I achieved. For example, you scored a full 100% out of maybe 5 lakh people. Now that becomes something important that the school would like to know. So go ahead and add your achievements on the academic, professional, as well as the community level. And you can add as many over here. You can keep on adding your achievements and awards. So use this section very wisely and don't feel shy of adding your achievements over here. Right. So the next section that we will talk about is the video interview information. This section doesn't want any action from you. It is just an information for you that once you submit your complete application for the Rotman MBA, there will be, you should look out for an email which will ask you to complete your video essays as well as the written response from the school within 2 business days. So if you don't get that response within 2 business days, it is time that you must reach out to the MBA team. So the admissions team, they have given an email address. You need to reach out to them, see that you get that email, because post that, if the email has been sent out to you, you have just 7 days to complete that assessment. So I had a very interesting applicant once. He was too busy preparing for the video assessment. He did not note that it was just 7 days. So don't prepare it as much as you just forget that it is within 7 days that you need to complete the assessment. So please make sure that you get the invite within the 2 business days that is being talked about after your application is submitted, and that you complete that assessment within the next 7 days as well. So this is the information that is passed on over here. What does the video interview at Rotman MBA require you to do? It will have around 3 questions. There will be 2 video recorded essays. So you'll get a prompt on the screen. You have to respond to that then and there. You'll get around 90 seconds to respond. And there will be a written response for which you will get around 10 minutes. And I must say that if you just go to GMAT Club, you'll get ample number of practice questions, and you will get a lot of resources which you can access, which will help you prepare for this video interview. So while you are preparing for your essay, you are preparing for the rest of the application to Rotman. It is it is important that you also prepare for the video interview information, because it is going to be as important as your written essay as well. So the next section over here is the references. So the Rotman MBA application requires you to fill two professional references. An automated form will reach your referees. It will be in their inbox the moment you add their details over here, and they have to talk about your work, how they have seen you perform, and how they rate you as high performers, or what are your weaknesses. So these are the things that your recommenders have to talk about. In addition to that, how do you choose your recommenders? So make sure that you're choosing your recommenders very wisely. You are paying a lot of attention in terms of who you are selecting as your recommenders. Some points to take away over here are the designation is not as important as your relationship and your work engagement with the recommender. So if you have to choose between two people, one person who's high on designation and one person who's high on the engagement and who's really seen you grow at work, I think you should choose the latter and add him as your referee rather than just going in for the designation.
Okay, thank you, Shruti.
Yeah.
So I have a question here from Amoli. Hi, Shruti. What if you have completed your master's from India and have 2 years of work experience? Do I have chance to get it as I don't have 4 to 5 years of experience?
Amoli, as far as the Rotman MBA application requirements are concerned, it does require you to have at least 2 years of work experience. So if you have your master's in India, you can just add that information, to the application form. We'll we have the academic section just coming up, so there will be space for you to add that particular piece of information. And post that, if you think that you are ready for an MBA and you can demonstrate it through your application essays as well as the rest of the parts of your career goals, what you have been doing till now, and how are you planning your career going forward, then it's absolutely fine. There is no problem. If you have a chance to get it as you don't have 4 or 5 years of experience, I don't think you should have a problem. You just I think you have to introspect and decide that yes, this is the program for me, and to be able to communicate it well, you have video essays, you have multiple platforms like your recommendation letter as well as your the main essay. So utilize all those resources very properly to bring out a strong case for yourself. I think you can definitely do it.
Okay. Another question from Selena. Would an academic reference work?
Selena, I think an academic reference will not work over here. You must prefer a professional reference because they do, look at your work experience, and it is a mandatory requirement for an MBA program. So try and avoid an academic reference and choose somebody who you have been professionally associated with. That is my suggestion.
All right, thank you. We can go ahead with the session. I'll ask other questions later.
Right. So this was about the reference requests, and once you fill up this information, you are free to open the next magical, the door to the next section, which is the academic and the test scores. So the section two. Yes, this is one more thing. The application loads slowly, so be patient when you're filling up the application. Don't keep it for the last moment. Whenever you are filling up your application form, you should always keep on doing it alongside. A lot of times, what I have noticed is that applicants, they'll work on the essays for months and months, let's say weeks and weeks. But then when it comes to filling up the application, they don't pay a lot of attention and they just bring it towards the end. Okay, the deadline is on 10th, let me start filling it on 8th or 5th. That's not the best way to do it. Please be patient with it and start well ahead in time. Right, so finally this has loaded and we have the section 2 up with us, which asks you about your academics. So you can add your post-secondary education. You need to add your bachelor's degree over here. There is a drop down which is available for selecting your degrees. I have just tried and put an anomaly case where I say that I cannot find my university. So let's say I am an Indian applicant and I have graduated from the Delhi University, and this university does not feature in the drop down list. So I can always check this box and add my university over here. Again, you have an option of mentioning whether your university offered you credits or not. So a bachelor's degree will definitely offer you credits, but there are other courses that you do. Let's say, for example, courses from Coursera. So these are courses which don't offer you credit, but you can also add them over here, and you just need to check that okay, this particular course was just for development, and I did not get any credits for that. So you'll have to go to this stage, upload a particular file for your transcript. I'm just uploading a dummy file because we need to proceed with this form. You add a start date and an end date. Mention whether it was a full-time education or a part-time education. The type of education, you have options from diploma, certificate, undergraduate, master's, PhD, and you can also mention others if you are not very clear of where it stands, but it is a self-development course. You can also add that over here. Then again, finally, a degree expected or earned. If you are doing a Coursera course, you can very well choose other over here if it is not related to any of these streams directly.
Okay, thank you. Question from Sunad. Hi Shruti, Rotman requires 4 years degrees. However, non-science undergrad degrees in India are 3 years. Does Rotman still make an exception for this?
So they do require the 4 year degrees, but a non science undergrad degree is also acceptable. It also depends on your years of work experience. So what I would recommend here is that you should share your degree along, along with the transcripts and the final degree that has been awarded to you. Just scan it and send it to the admissions team. They will be very prompt with the response. Sometimes they are busy. Yes, they can take some time to revert back to you, but just take that step ahead of time and reach out to them to see if your degree is valid. So every country has its own formats of awarding degrees. So the best judge of whether your degree qualifies for their criteria or not is to reach out to the admissions team, share your transcripts, share your degrees, and see what they have to say. Most of the times, you will have a very clear answer and a workaround on what exactly you need to do. Right. So this was adding the first education. Then this is another example of adding another piece of education where I don't get a credit, and a similar format of adding this information. You can say whether this is undergraduate, full time, or part time, and the kind of degree which is expected out of this. The name of the degree or earned or expected is not a mandatory field, so you don't need to really specify that, but a major is expected. So if it is a leadership certificate you've done, so you can add that okay, this is a leadership certificate program that I have done. So we'll have to save this application again and wait for a few seconds for this to load back so that it takes us to the next stage of the application process. In the meanwhile, Fisayo, in case you have any question, I'll be happy to take that. Oh, it's loaded very quickly.
Yes, we do have some questions here. So, from Alfredo, how much time does your referees have to complete the recommendation?
So your referees must complete the recommendation by the deadline of the program. So you should try and see that once you are submitting the program, submitting the application, everything is taken care of. That is the ideal case. So try and make sure that your references are submitted as well as soon as you are planning to submit your application form. So
Okay,
that means the deadline of the program that you are applying.
okay. A similar question regarding your references, does it need to be from your most current employer?
It is very much a positive thing to take your references from your most current employer, but there are a lot of instances where probably you will not be very comfortable in discussing about your MBA plans with your current employer, and that is perfectly fine. In that case, you need to see and identify people who you have worked with, who you have reported to, and you can add them as references. So the first point that you need to ensure is that it has to be a professional recommendation, whether and you should have reported to this person so that he can talk about your work. Right. So the section 2 asks us to fill up the academics. We've done one part. Let us go to the second part, which is the test scores. So there are 3 points over here. One is the standardized test. Standardized test means your GMAT or GRE score. So the Rotman MBA application process allows you to take an exemption. This exemption is allowed if you have a CFA level 2, a level 3, or if you are a charter holder. So in case you have any of these, you can very well be exempt from submitting a GMAT or a GRE score. If not, then we have to proceed with this form over here. So when you are submitting your GMAT score, you can either select that you've already taken the test, or you are scheduled to take it in the future, or you're not planning to submit the GMAT at all. So if it is not the GMAT, then that means you will submit the GRE, let's say. And if you are going in for the exemption, then you can click a no on both of these, and then you have the third point over here, that is the professional designations, which we will come to in a few moments from now, where you have to attach your CFA. So let's say I have scheduled to take it in the future. I just need to mention over here as to when I'm writing the GMAT test. I if I'm going to take the GMAT test, I still need to go to the GRE section, and you need to select a no over here, so that the requirements of the application form are complete. These are both marked in red. So that means both of these sections are required to be fulfilled before you proceed to the next one. Right. So the next part of the test requirement is the language proficiency test. Language proficiency test means that you need to submit any proof of your, the scale of your knowledge of the English language as such. So first thing over here is to identify whether you really qualify for submitting an English language proficiency test as an international student or as a domestic student. If your transcript mentions that the language of instruction for your bachelor's or for your undergraduate studies was English, then you do not need to submit any proof of the language proficiency test. That means over here in this section, you go ahead with selecting the option as no. Let's say you select it as yes. What do we have to do then? So we can again select whether I have taken the test, or I'm scheduled to take it in the future, or I'm not writing it at all. So let's say I'm scheduled to take it in the future. I have options of selecting the various tests which are applicable or acceptable by this program, which is the IELTS academic. You have the TOEFL IBT, you have the TOEFL paper-based test, the COPE as well as the CAEL. These are all acceptable tests. And just mention a future date when you are planning to write the test. That's about it, which is required in this part of this section. And the third part of this section is whether you have a professional designation. So if you have a CFA, that means you have probably also applied for a GMAT waiver or a GRE waiver. Then you mention yes over here and add your CFA credentials. You can also additionally add more professional designations as well as any memberships that you hold with associations. This is a purely optional test, so we don't want you going and joining new association membership just to follow or update your form over here. If you are a member, then please do update over here. Otherwise, it's not a mandatory requirement, so don't need to be worked up on filling up this part of the section. Right, so section 1 and section 2 are done. This brings us to section 3. So the section 3 of the application form for the Rotman MBA will require 3 things from you. One will be your essay, the application essay that you have to submit. Then you have some supplemental items which you can submit. One is mandatory, one is optional. And then finally, the formalities about signing off the boxes and adding your signature to this. So let's start with the first requirement of this section, which is the essay. So the essay topic for the Rotman MBA, now this topic requires a response of 500 words. Earlier it used to be around 1,000 words, but the lesser the better, but more crisp, a more crisp response is required. So the essay reads that you need to explain your spike factor. Spike factor means things that are unique about yourself that you believe will contribute to the Rotman community. So this is point number 1. Then aligned with Rotman values. This is the second expectation. Third, how will you use your spike factor to succeed as an MBA student and beyond? So there are roughly around four or five things that you have to correlate and communicate in this particular essay. Another very interesting aspect of the Rotman essay is the spikiest pictures that you have to add. So Rotman allows you to add one PDF of three pictures, up to three pictures, which you think showcase your spike factor. So you can show, you can tell, you can show and tell, and you can really express how you think you will add value to the Rotman community, how you are aligned with the Rotman values, and then how it will help you succeed to contribute as an MBA student as well as beyond that as a professional. So this is what the requirement of the essay is. Coming to the next part of the section, you have two uploads over here. One is if you want to upload these photographs, the spike factor photographs that we talked about, this is an optional section. You can just put it into one PDF and add it here. Second is a mandatory section, though it comes in the end, but it is one of the most important sections for an international application. A lot of times your application is read starting from resume. So you have to upload your resume over here, which is a mandatory requirement. You need to put up a one page resume. Rotman gives a very clear instruction for the resume that they are seeking, and it is always good to address to the requirements that the school has given, and it does simplify a lot of things for you. So we'll come to the resume if we have time, slightly later. But this brings us towards almost the end of the application. So in case, Fisayo, you have any questions that you would like me to take up, I'll be happy to do that.
Sure, thank you, Shruti. So we have a couple of questions here. This one is taking us back to the video interview. So could you talk a little bit about the video interviews? Any suggestions would be helpful.
Yes. So the video interviews are, things that will check your research and introspection. So these are two different things. Introspection, that means you need to be self-aware. You need to have your stories in place. You need to be very impromptu with your responses. That means you need to be very clear with what you communicate. So, for example, if it is a question that you have 24 hours extra in the week, what will you do with it? Now, this is not a response where I set myself thinking at that point in time. These are things that I really need to have thought about myself, about the way I feel about my work and about my life, and then I communicate these things forward. So, do make sure that you have ample practice on behavioral questions. You have looked into your own insights as a professional, as a person, so that you are able to compile both of these on the spot for that question. Second part that I mentioned was research. So when you talk about research, that means have you researched the school well? Have you looked at what the program is about? So a lot of times, the question can be just about, okay, why do you need the Rotman MBA and why now? So just answering that on a sheet of paper, I have a lot of time to edit and review and then discuss and see if I'm going in the right direction. But then when you have to give an impromptu response, you really don't have that time. If you have a clear head, you will be able to communicate that. So this is what will show in a good video essay response. Plus, the third part of the video interview is the written response, which at Rotman is usually about, it's usually about the functional business communication that you have. So they will ask you to write an email to an alum. They might ask you to write a short note to the admissions committee asking about something. So how crisp and clear at the same time, very professional you are with your written communication is something that is tested over there. So practice and preparation is going to be equally important, as important for your interview, your GMAT, as well as the video interview as well. You need to be very ready with on the spot responses. Plus, at the same time, you need to also be very clear in what you are trying to communicate. We don't have time to go back and forth for a response. That will not be a good response for the video interview.
Okay. Another question here. Hi, a counselor told me that having a master's in technology in India will be viewed negatively during the admission in Canada. Is that true?
A master's in technology in India means that you are looking at a very, you are looking at a very clear career, a technical career itself. So now, whether it is viewed negatively also depends on what your career trajectory has been. Have you been into R&D for and for how long? So the number of years you've spent in a certain role, all of that compiles into a certain story. So I think a more detailed discussion is required here than just a data point of having a master's in technology. Probably that is not the only thing that is a reservation from the schools, and there might be other things that are adding to it.
Okay. Next question. Is there any way to receive an application fee waiver for an international applicant?
Application fee waivers are offered by schools again in a very ad hoc manner, depending on the cycles and depending on their plans. So it is best to reach out to them, see what they have in mind, and if they a lot of application waivers are actually offered to you when you are attending the webinars that the school has to offer. So go ahead, reach out to them, and speak with them, attend the webinars. They are Rotman, and post COVID, all the schools they are reaching out one on one in very prominent cities. So it is always good and you to go and meet with them, and you will know about application fee waivers with respect to the school policy.
Okay, question from Eva. Hi, Shruti. With regards to the awards achievements list, can you add teams that you were a part of in school, like the debates team? Does this count?
So if you have been awarded as a team, that is a very big achievement because it was not you alone and it was the team working together with you. And you really have to have a lot of mobilization power, and you have to have a lot of uh, impact and collective thought process going into a team achieving a certain award. If you have a team award, that is definitely a plus. But just being part of a team, that doesn't really count as an award or an achievement. Yes, you should see that, go beyond that particular fact and see if there is an achievement to account for. If yes, then please go ahead and write that.
Okay, next one. Do we need to provide a reason anywhere in the application as to why we did not choose a current employer for letter of recommendation?
As of now, there is no section where you can add any additional essay or any optional essay. So, if you're not choosing a current employer as a reference, the school is free to assume anything about it, but there is probably no place where you can explain that.
Okay. Question from Sam. Hi, Shruti. I have 3 years of experience at Barclays Bank. Currently, I am taking a career break for a year and also prepping for my GMAT. Going to apply round two. Will the break be an issue?
Sam, it depends. In terms of when we are evaluating a break, we need to see how long and prior to that, how has your career been. So, if you have a very clear criteria of you can give that explanation that, okay, I have a break because of preparing for the GMAT and I am not getting time at my job, that is perfectly fine. But otherwise, a lot of people are applying without taking a break. Factually, when I don't have a lot of space to explain all of that, it does stand out as not a very strong point, of course.
Yeah, from Jinan. Hi, thank you for listening. Who do you think would be a good recommender from for an entrepreneur prospective student?
Yes. So, Jinan, from an entrepreneur prospective student, your recommenders could range from, let's say, your partners, your investors, your bankers, or even your clients. So, you have to see who can talk the best about your work experience and choose from any of these. There are other options possible, but these are most likely the stakeholders who will be able to talk about you, where they are witnessing your performance as a receiver of your services. And so try and avoid people who are service providers to you, who are suppliers to you, who are your vendors. So you can avoid all of these. Try and see people who are actually at the receiving end of the work that you are doing.
Thank you for that. Next question. Hi, Shruti. The class average for Rotman hovers around 700, but would it be that big of a dent if my GMAT score is lower than the class average?
So now GMAT is a very important criteria. I'm assuming here that you are an international applicant. So as an international applicant, it is an important criteria that really helps you stand out. So, but if you have a GMAT lower than the class average, it is not that it will be a very huge negative, provided you have the story and you have, there should be some strength. I have either the GMAT and the story, or I have the GMAT alone, and let's say the story is a normal professional. But then if your story stands out, then a lower than average GMAT. Again, an average is, of course, across a range, right? So we have people going in with lower than average GMAT as well. But then focus on the story and that you have a strong story to tell to the school.
Okay. What would be a competitive GRE score for a male Indian applicant?
In terms of the GRE score, a score of, let's say, around 325 plus. A competitive score would be, let's say, a 330 or more than that. So this would be a competitive score for the Indian male applicants. Indians score a lot on the GRE, and the GRE is slightly easier to score. Keeping all of that into account, this is where I'm coming from.
Okay, another test related question. I have both scores, GRE and GMAT. Both are similar. Which one should I choose? Both or just GRE or GMAT?
If they are both similar, then you could probably see that what are the different. So GMAT has a lot of components. It has the IR, it has the AWA, as well as your quant and verbal. And the GRE and GMAT, even if it is, a collective score at the end, you will always be able to compare the breakup. So see where you stand in terms of your quantitative skills and in terms of your verbal skills. Is the GMAT stronger or the GRE stronger? And then probably choose the best score for yourself.
Question from Linda. Is there a list of colleges that are accepted by Rotman for language proficiency?
A list of colleges. So I am assuming here that you are mentioning about the transcripts mentioning that the English has been the primary language of delivery for that course. So, Linda, the best way to do and decide on this is that you look at the backside or maybe just go into the details of your undergraduate degree. It will very clearly mention. A lot of times people do have to go back to their colleges and get that letter which tells them that yes, it is English has been the language. But nowadays, most of the transcripts will mention it on the transcript itself. So you actually don't need a list of colleges. You just need to read that document very thoroughly and probably reach out to your college as well to certify that for you.
Okay. Under professional designations, can we mention if any CFA levels are cleared?
Cleared. Yeah. So, Gandharv, over here, there are two things. One is whether you are applying for a GMAT waiver. So, if you are applying for a GMAT or a GRE waiver, that means you have at least a level 2 and or a level 3. So, then when you are attaching your CFA, it will automatically have those levels cleared. So, you don't need to mention it anywhere. The school will be able to, judge the difference right from the documents that you are putting forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Will someone with over 9 years work experience still need to submit a GRE score?
Yes. So if you look at the exemption for the GMAT or the GRE, it is totally based on the qualifications that you're coming in with. That means a very clear CFA level 2 or a CFA level 3 or a charter holder. Unless these three are satisfied, everybody else has to submit either a GMAT or a GRE score.
Question from Kavish. How are scholarships given at Rodman? Are there any additional essays that we have to submit?
So Kavish, we have had people getting scholarships at Rotman. and there are no additional essays that you have to submit. You will get the scholarship based on the quality and the strength of your application as well as the interview. So make sure that you excel at everything, and I think you are up for a scholarship for sure. And apply in the early rounds, because that is when the scholarships are really handed out by international schools. So apply in round 1, max round 2, so that you have a good chance of putting your case forward.
Okay, last question for now, and then I'll take the other questions afterwards. Hi Shruti, I have 4 years experience in aviation, but I took a career break of 4 years for UPSC exam preparation in India. How do I explain it to foreign schools unaware of UPSC? Is it a deal breaker?
Yes, so this is a very typical scenario for what's happening with Indian applicants. But let's say I look at it from the international school point of view. For me, a break is a break, right? If you think that exam was so important that you took a career break, and that too of 4 years, then you have to be able to explain that. So try and see that the schools that you're applying to, first you should go ahead and speak with them before you are putting up your application. Have a conversation with them. They have ambassadors, they have the admissions team who is ready to communicate and understand your situation. Make sure that you are making that well known to them. Second is that use the additional essay, use the optional essay. If you mention the right credentials and the right motivations for you to get into this particular journey of 4 years, then probably it will be an acceptable case.
All right, let's continue with the session.
Right. So I have a one-page resume, that the format that Rotman requires, and I would like to share that as well as a part of this discussion, so that this really saves you a lot of time, and it is something important that you must look into. So there are two things when you're putting up your resume. One is the content, and one is the format. It is widely it is a wide trend that people do look at into the format. Okay, what makes my resume look beautiful? How does it look more impressive? What is the font size? What is the format? Do I put my picture there or not? None of it is required. Please just look at the school specified format and go with it. It will save you half your energy, so that you can put it towards the other things which are important. So use this particular format. It is a very well structured format which will give you a lot of information. If you just look at what this format requires, it starts from your education. Again, I'm not going into the formatting requirements. Just stick to what the school wants, and that should be more than sufficient, so that everybody is on the same page. That is the best way to put your present your case. So start with your education, add your bachelor's degree, add all your achievements in terms of case competitions, in terms of dean scholarships, or if you've got any academic achievements, or your GPA and GMAT, whatever stands out from that particular period with the education section itself. Then you can also add your masters as well over here. Finally, the most important section is your work experience section. So your employment experience, go into that once you and just right. So once you look at the employment section, see that you have the section for the name of the employer, your location, and then the duration. So minus all of that, there is a very nice opportunity over here to write one line about the employer itself. So write about the work that the company does, what the employer is into, so that when I'm reading your application as an adcom, I get a context of where you're coming from. The next point where you must devote the maximum attention is to build a repository of your achievements at work and try and put them in a star format. It is very important for you to look at your achievements from the point of view of, first, what was the situation, what was the challenge. So start with the power work, add what actions you took, what were the things that you did in that particular resume point, bullet point that you want to talk about, and then end with a very quantitative achievement. So it should be in numbers. Try and put as many numbers, so that these are all tangible achievements that we can discuss about when you are in the interview. So First step on building a good resume is to look at it strategically. Don't bother about the format, just use the school's format. Then go about expanding your work experience into a full list of repository. Build it into everything that you have done, and then prioritize. Try and prioritize things where you have tangible achievements, you have things and numbers to talk about, and where you have taken the initiative and you have learned and grown as a professional. Pick out those points and then talk about them in your resume. The last section of this resume talks about your additional interests and achievements. So if you've completed marathons, if you've been a champion in swimming, if you've been into volunteering, if you've learned some technical languages, so all of the additional interests that you have had, they can also fit into this. A lot of people might think that, okay, how can my 5 years or 6 years of experience fit into a one page resume? So that is the main exercise that you have to get into, not the formatting part. So my recommendation is to use the school format that the school suggests, and then work on the bullet points. This might be the first document that the school looks at when they are looking at your application. So spend a lot of time on this as much as you're spending on your essays. So that is why I wanted to bring this up, as a special uh, addition to the Rotman application. This is an equally important part of the application.
Thank you for sharing this, Shruti. Let me just take some more questions. But please, everyone, please don't forget to hit like on this video. You've been enjoying it so far. Please hit like on this video. Uh, so, question from. Okay. So, hi Shruti, do backlogs matter? I had more than 10 backlogs during my engineering, but I cleared them on time. Can a good GMAT score compensate that?
It does. So I do. So a lot of countries, like for example India, if you have cleared your backlogs, your mark sheet will, or your final degree will actually be the final result that you have got. So if you've had 10 backlogs and you have been able to clear them on time, that means on time means completing a 4 year degree in a 4 year period. Let's say if it is an engineering degree, then I don't think it should have such a lot of impact. Your GMAT score will definitely, a high GMAT score will definitely help you compensate on that. That's okay. It happens.
Okay, next question. What work experience documents are required for Rotman? Will the work X SETI on company letterhead mentioning joining resigning dates with pay scales last basic suffice? I don't have salary slips.
That should also be sufficient, but it is always best to just share all this information along with your resume with the school directly and see that they give you a go ahead. Never go with any assumptions. It is always just reach out to them and they are happy to help you and say that yes, it is a go, but more or less it will work.
Okay. I'm an ACCA member with 5 years of experience. Can I get GMAT exemption?
Again, because it is a country specific membership, it is always good to see how it equates with the west qualifications, or with the west, let's say the parity with the west evaluation. So either you get a west evaluation and say that yes, it is equivalent to the memberships or the CFA levels that are required by the school. If you have that, then you can certainly add that. Otherwise, you can just share it with the school and see what they have to say to that.
Okay. Question from Alfredo. In the award section, should I mention a scholarship from the Canadian government during an exchange semester? Do awards consider achievements in sports?
You can add achievements. The first one, yes, definitely the scholarship will can go over there. It should go at two places, added to your resume as well as to the awards section. And awards consider achievements in sports. This definitely is an important achievement. You can add that. Again, depends on what level the awards are. So if you think you have a clear idea of whether it will qualify as the engagement level of engagement was at the academic level, then you can add that. Otherwise, you can put it to your resume for sure.
question from Nitesh. I have 11 years experience in the insurance industry domain. Is it a good time to get an MBA along with GMAT score?
Yes. So, Nitesh, your question is so there are a lot of MBA programs now. There are 2 year MBA programs, there are 1 year MBA programs, there are executive MBA programs, you have part-time programs, some require the GMAT program, GMAT score, some don't require the GMAT score. So you need to be very clear as to what your career aspirations are and then shortlist the school for yourself. I have had people ranging from 2 years till 20 years going in for an MBA, but again the choice of the MBA program and the choice of the cohort and the school is very typical, and it is very important for you to first look into what your career aspirations are, where you are coming from, where do you want to head to, and then identify the program rather than just going by ranking or the criteria which are generally used by MBA applicants.
Okay, question from Sahil. Is 15 years of study accepted?
15 years of study. So, Sahil, I just addressed that previously as well. It is not that it is not accepted. It is just that your work experience criteria might slightly go beyond the normal. So it is always good to share your resume with them, the work experience that you're coming with. So just share it with the school, and I think they are the best people who will. Uh, so again, what course have you studied? How does it qualify you for the MBA program? All of these questions will be very well addressed by the school directly, but more or less it should not be a problem. I don't know the number of years of experience, but based on that, you can probably have a match.
Okay, last question. Hi, Shruti. What is the acceptance rate for Rotman? Is it as low as the college on the flag behind you?
You noticed the flag as well. I was trying to hide it behind a virtual background. Okay. So the acceptance rate for Rotman doesn't give out any numbers, so I would not be commenting on those numbers as such unless we have a number which is given out by the school directly. It's not right to go ahead and comment on those numbers.
Okay, do you have any closing remarks? We have 2 minutes left to the end of the session.
So applying to an MBA program, I would like to say, it's a long process. You go through the GMAT, you go through the GRE, and then you finally shortlist the schools. You apply to some, you win some, you lose some. But at the same time, it is very important, one, to be very positive. Second, to research very well. Just don't go by hearsay or somebody has said. So these are all individual data points. You must always be very open to discussing your particular case with the school, with the experts, so that you are able to decide that, okay, is this the best option I have, or what is the pool of options that you should look at. So based on that, the MBA, basically the MBA spectrum has changed a lot over the last few years. A lot of people are only aware of the 2 year MBA programs. There are 1 year MBA programs. There are very good executive MBA programs which will help you transition your career, but then have very clear goals and a very thorough research before you plan on stepping into this journey. That will really save you a lot of mental space.
Okay, one last question. Some MBA colleges in Canada, the Sotos Alberta, offer 20 months programs for MBA. Do they qualify for post study 3 year work visa that is offered to 2 year MBA programs like Rotman students?
Yes. So, Pradeep, over here, the rules are not defined by the MBA program. The rules are defined by the Canadian government. So, I am not an expert on the post-study visa or the immigration rules. But from what I know so far is that if you are pursuing a 1 year MBA program in Canada, you get a post-study work visa of around a year. And if you are studying, to pursuing a 2 year MBA program, you get a post-study work visa of around 3 years. But again, how does this specific program which you are selecting to take up qualify? Because all of these programs, if you see Resortals as well as Alberta, they have a range of the months that they offer. They'll offer you programs starting from 16 to 24 months. So it is up to you to choose that duration so that you qualify for that work visa requirement. I am not an expert on the immigration laws, I would really be able to help you on the admissions process. So that's why I would refrain from addressing this question very directly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shruti, and thank you everyone for watching. If you have any more questions, you can definitely put it in the comments after this video is over. Somebody else would respond to you. Thank you so much, everyone. It was so great to have you on the session. Thank you, Shruti. I wish you all the best in your MBA applications. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.